Hi, I'm Russ Heaps, and in this segment of Beer to Whiskey, I'm sitting here with my good buddy Tim. He's also my beer drinking co-conspirator. Next to him we have Stephanie Harper, and next to her we have Chris Trintine.
You got it.
I got it right?
You got it.
All right, jeez,
Good job.
I'm better than I thought I was. Chris and Stephanie are with the Islamorada Beer Company in Islamorada, Florida. It's at 82229 Overseas Highway. Easy to find. As I understand it, Stephanie is the head brewmaster here in the Islamorada brewery. They also have a somewhat larger operation up in Fort Pierce where they also brew some beer. Chris is sort of the head honcho of the whole thing. And Chris, how did this get started?
Oh, funny story as usual, as it should be with beer. Me and a couple of my college buddies were all out on the boat after we graduated from college, and we're just, going over to the Bahamas for a couple days, and we brought cases and cases of beer with us, and we hear about all these breweries opening up, and we're like, maybe we should try and open up a beer company because all these other guys, are making all this money off of us. Maybe we can give it a shot, thinking it would be somewhat easier than it has been, but our buddy Tyrone is actually the one that kind of homebrewed for a while and kind of put some concoctions together, and here we are.
So basically it's four guys that you went to college with,
yep.
Right? And who are they?
My buddy Nick Schroth, he lives up in Stewart. He was down here. I actually knew him through middle school and high school, and then we went to UCF together. And then Jose Herrera, he's our head of sales. He pretty much travels around the state. And then Tyrone Bradley, he runs the day-to-day operations of the beer company right now.
What was the toughest thing about getting this thing started?
Probably say the paperwork side of it, through the government, it's pretty intense with the background checks and everything else. I mean, you would think you're opening up a gun shop or something. Not a brewery where you're selling beer. It's pretty intense. Between that and then distribution side is pretty crazy. Trying to figure out which way to go. Because once you're tied to a distributor, it's like getting married. You're married for life, and if there's a divorce, it's going to cost you. You
mentioned earlier your actual daytime job. This is sort of your hobby.
It's my most expensive hobby.
No, it's not that bad.
No, I mean, it's came because it's been an awesome thing. I mean, what did we used to do? Go out on the boat and drink beer, and go to events and go to charity things and drink beer. So now we do the same thing, but now it's just now we're just pushing it while we're there and getting it out to the public. So I mean, it's a cool I'd say side job to have. So I'm pretty much always working, whether I'm doing my day job or drinking beer after work. It's still work.
Your day job is you're a contractor.
I'm a contractor down here.
Correct. And what's the name of the company?
CBT Construction.
CBT, okay.
I'm actually born and raised down here, so it's kind of how the whole Islamorada thing came about. All of them always used to come down here in college. And
Stephanie, as the head brewer here, how did you get started?
Well, I started with home brewing, but really when I started working here, I just wanted to bartend. So I was like, I'll bartend a couple days and see kind of what happens, because I was teaching scuba diving full time. Doesn't really pay if you've ever been in that industry. It's like, I need a side job, my side job in beer as well. And then eventually I started expressing a little bit more interest in it and asking Tyrone if I could come in and help brew. And from there it kind of just, gosh, I feel like I blinked and...
No, she went from thinking that she was only going to be here for a day a week to now being stuck with us for the rest of her life. So.
Yep.
So this is another one of those separations are going to cost you a lot of money kind of things.
Yeah. And she was an incredible diver and still loves it, but I think she just kind of was getting burnt out of it. It was kind of a good transition because we love her here and she's an easy fit.
Yeah, it worked out really well. It's nice when you're only liable for yourself and maybe a small situation in the back instead of being liable for 8 divers underwater, and it takes a little bit of the pressure off.
What do you like to brew? Do you have something that you really enjoy?
Yes. I have lots of beers that I love to brew. The entire process of any beer is really exciting, especially because I'm lucky enough to be able to be on a lot of the recipe development side. So when you start something and you're kind of sitting there and coming up with a recipe, and you get to go through the whole process until the beer is 100% complete, it's just so exciting when it comes out exactly as you planned it, or really close, or even better sometimes. Sometimes not so much, but it's just the process in general of brewing, especially new stuff, is really exciting, and making adjustments to recipes to make them better or whatever the case. So I do prefer to do some fun, I like to do
Don't
some...
say it.
Here we go.
No Wake Zone's my favorite beer.
Which is a composite, right?
Is that what we're drinking
So
now?
No Wake Zone's what we're drinking right now. No Wake Zone is a relatively simple recipe. It's a coconut key lime blonde. So it's kind of light on the coconut and the key lime, but it's supposed to be because it still tastes like beer. And that's kind of what we want. We still want you to be able to drink it out on the water all day long. If it's overdone or too powerful in the flavors, usually you're going to end up with some sort of palate fatigue, or you're not going to want to drink more than one of them.
You get a mouthfeel like, you know, when you have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If it's got too much of a fruity flavor, you know, too much coconutty.
So we try to keep it really well balanced.
Mouth fatigue. That's a new one for me. So we've learned something today. Mouth fatigue. You guys do some charity things, correct? Yes, no? Like what?
We donate beer to pretty much every not-for-profit event that there is down here. I mean, I've always been, since being born and raised here, you know, the community's always given back to me. So, you know, kind of our thing is to give back to the community that's been able to get us to where we're at. So, I mean, pretty much no matter what there is, whether it's something for the animal shelter, you know, when they're doing their pet rescues, or, you know, from the gigantic nautical flea market where they have 25,000 people that walk through the gates, you know, which is Rotary puts it on. You know, we just try and be there for the community as much as we can.
Well, you do a regular kind of a sandbar thing, don't you? Once a month, or
Yeah, I mean, well, we're usually at the sandbar every weekend. You know, we try to be there just because that's where Sandbar Sunday came from, which is one of our, you know, most popular beers. But yeah, we're usually trying to do some kind of barge party there at least once a month, you know, if we can.
So, Stephanie, tell me one thing that people probably don't know about you.
Maybe I'm from Delaware, so it's the first state. It's really interesting, right above the Mason-Dixon line. And I never expected to live in Florida, ever, until I
Really?
came down. Yeah,
So what?
I was on a 2-year plan to live in the Keys, and then become a real professional adult. As I told myself. Not that this isn't professional.
I'd say you got a pretty good job. It's like, I mean, how many other people can drink all day long and get paid to do it?
I think I have the best job, and I think I'm very much so a professional adult.
I
I
would
just
agree most
decided
of the
to
time.
stay in the Keys.
People have the idea if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not work. Well, it can be work. Just because you enjoy it doesn't mean it isn't. It isn't a
still
legitimate
work.
profession.
Yeah, I mean, if you know anything about brewing, 90% of brewing is cleaning. Luckily, I like it when things are clean. So it actually kind of puts me at ease a little bit when you're working and doing certain things. But it is work, but it's an amazing job.
Yeah, you
So-
still have that stress level. I mean, if
Yeah.
she screws up a batch, I mean, luckily it's only a 2-barrel system here. It's not as bad, but
Not as bad.
that's still some of our favorite customers that are coming in and wondering why the beer's not
Yeah.
ready, and it took 4 weeks, but it usually takes 2.
Right.
It's 'cause, oh, she might have had to do it
Well,
twice, you know.
there's no real problem there.
Have you ever had a recipe that you came up with, and once you actually made it, you went, yeah, this just doesn't work?
Honestly, yeah, but a lot of it isn't so much the recipe where you're like, oh, this just doesn't work. It's more certain things can go wrong. Like I do a lot of stuff on my stovetop at my house, like roasting. Originally, I roasted about 20 pounds of coconut on my stove, and I would come. So you roast it up, get it up to a certain temperature, but you can't burn it. So you can't. The oils have to be like not too prevalent in there, so it needs to be perfectly roasted every time, or it tastes like sunscreen. If it's over roasted, it tastes burnt. So you're sitting there and you're like over the stove, like trying to get it perfect. But when you're doing stuff like that and you're opening up your firms and dumping things in there and everything else, like you're always putting a beer at risk for infection. So we do whatever we can to work on it and to make it so that it's perfect. But I'd say with making a lot of the purees and stuff, that's where most of the struggles come in. And unfortunately, you're not going to put a bad beer out.
Right.
So it does have to go down. I cried my first time, but and there's only
And I assume Chris
like-
did as well, but
I just pat her on the. I say you'll do better next time. I'm sure. It's okay. But I mean, there's a lot of beers too. Even if, like, you know, aside from the bacteria, if she doesn't necessarily like how it turned out, you know, a lot of people will still like it. I mean, that's the good thing about here is everybody's palate's different. I mean, we go most towards light beers, but you know, she really likes to make heavier dark beers. So that's why once in a while there's one on there.
I was thrilled when we came in here and you had one on this time, because I'm a brown porter stout drinker, and I was pretty excited to see that Card Sound brown up there.
Try and keep the heavier ones towards the kind of the holidays and towards
Sure.
the cooler months, which, you know, we say cooler months down here, but when it gets below 90.
Yeah.
And you can never predict it because it's different with
Right.
everything. Like we just did mini season, which is a peach saison. This is the second batch I ever did of it, and I love saisons. A lot of, I'd say like 50-50 that come in here don't really know what a saison is, and they see peach and they're like, oh, can I try a sip of it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And you kind of go into a little bit of what it is and they're like, oh, I love this. So that one was selling out like really quickly for a while. And it's nice, but you're also, because I thought we were going to have some for mini season still, and then because it's called mini season, and then
Yeah.
we didn't, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to order more yeast. Oh my gosh, it's the 4th of July. Oh my gosh, White Lab said they can't have it out for this period of time. So there's certain little things that come together and you're like, oh wow, like we run through beer. And you don't always want to have like too much of the same on tap either. So you don't want to keep everything always like, here's your set list. So we do try to change it up.
Are there any styles that you haven't attempted yet that you would like to in the future?
Yes. A lot.
Well,
So-
let's pick one or two.
Okay, I'm really excited. I really want to do a kettled sour. I know that I think that sours are really refreshing, and I think that it really sticks with our brand, but introducing certain types of bacteria into this environment, if there were some sort of an infection, would be really hard to get out. So I think that if we were to get Pat and Tyrone down here to kind of, I just like to have extra
Somebody
hands
else
when
to
we do
blame it on
something.
if it doesn't go.
Especially Pat, that would be the best. It's Pat's fault.
You guys were here
So-
for it. Don't blame this on
Yeah,
me.
but you know, it will, from what I've been looking at and what I've been reading about, it will take up the kettle for quite a bit of time, and it would be a good experience for all of us, I think, to kind of be here together doing it. But I'd really like to do a kettled sour because I think it would just fit our area really nicely.
Sure. So, Chris, what's something that most people don't know about you?
I'd say from the outside looking in, a lot of people don't know that I've been here my whole life. You know, I mean, I'm born and raised in the Keys, you know. I mean, I left for a couple years for college, but, you know, it's pretty cool. There's not a whole lot of us, you know, so it's kind of one of those things. And people are like, people live there? You know, you go anywhere and people, what? The Keys? And then just like, only Key West. Like, people don't even, I mean, Islamorada came up on the map a lot more the last, say, 10 years, but when I was in college, people, you say the Keys and the only thing they know of is Key West.
Right.
You know, so it's, you know, it's been a cool process. Even with the beer company kind of growing, I think it's almost helped people learn about Islamorada more because, you know, even you go to the West Coast, Tampa, you know, St. Pete, and there's still people over there like, where's Islamorada? You know, and it's like, you know, it's 4.5 hours south.
Yeah, right.
You have people walking into the tasting room sometimes and they're like, where's Islamorada? Or Islamorada?
Yeah, no, it's like Isla, it's usually Islamorada or Islamorada.
But you're like, oh, you're here.
Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah.
Or how much further till we're in the Keys? Congratulations.
We have good
Key West
news.
is 2 hours.
Yeah, we have good news for you. You're here. Well, guys, I appreciate the invitation, having us here. It's learned a little bit. It's been fun. So, with that, we'll shut her down. See you next time.